Welcome to Voice America. And we're going to do the show here on Zoom, and we're going to post this for everybody to see. So I'm going to welcome Tim Horn to our show today, and he's going to talk about his new book, Skies Wide Open. Sky or Sky Wide Open? I always get the
Skies Wide Open.
It was double. Yeah, Skies Wide Open. And I'm just going to let him tell you all about it. But first, I'm going to ask him to tell us about how he came to hypnosis and what he does in hypnosis and how he sees hypnosis. Okay, please go ahead, Tim.
Well, actually, they're kind of all blended together. When I was about 25, 26 years old, a lot thinner, a lot healthier, I used to wake up in the middle of the night suffering from panic attacks to the point I thought I was having a heart attack. It made absolutely no sense. I had gotten my heart checked. It was perfectly good. Did the stress test, checked all the other things. My heart was very strong. So the question was, why was I having these panic attacks? So what I did was I took some self-hypnosis classes, and those self-hypnosis classes allowed me to get rid of the panic attack entirely within about 2 to 3 months. And after
in Simpson.
Hang on a second.
Oh, I hear Martin in the background. Sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. It's just he's talking to Voice America now, or somebody there.
Oh, that's good. Well, we'll get to them in a minute. What I determined was the power of hypnosis was pretty strong, and I determined I'd learn more about hypnosis. I've always been kind of an inquisitive person. So I ended up taking a class, certification class from Bert Goldman. I became a certified hypnotist and helped some people along the way. And eventually I became a certified instructor for hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And what it made me realize is all the programming we have from the very beginning of life and how it can really affect the way we are. Actually, it's one of the reasons I wrote my book, Plug, Skies Wide Open.
That's what the show's about, because the information is very important for parents to know about.
Well, thank you. Actually, I've had some psychologists who've read the book. They've contacted me and said, I'd have a lot fewer clients if parents had read this book. The fact is, the way the parents approach their kids, it essentially sets up their foundation for a better life. If every time a child goes out and tries to learn something, they're afraid of learning it or afraid the damage it could cause, that fear prevents them from becoming fully engaged in learning.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if a child goes and they go to school, if they look for the things that they can learn, positive attitude, they do much better. But frequently, children are so worried about making mistakes in school, they can't learn.
Mm-hmm.
They just feel tight. Every time they think of something, they're thinking of what could be wrong and how do I avoid it, as opposed to, Theodore Roosevelt said that the real heroes are the ones who go out into the arena and fight. Well, school is not an arena, but children have to go on with the idea that they're really going to be fully engaged and enjoy it. One of the techniques I discuss for parents is when their children come home, at the very beginning, just as they begin their school career, if they ask their children, so what didn't go right in school and how are you going to change that so it doesn't happen again? This does a couple things. From the very beginning, the children know that parents do not expect them to be perfect. The parents do not expect them to get 100 on every test, don't expect them to interact with children perfectly every time. But what the parents do expect them to do is to feel like they can improve their quality of life, improve the way they learn, improve their relationships with others. And the way you do that is going out and making as many mistakes as you can and correcting them. There's a wonderful saying, you see it on Facebook all the time, the master's made more mistakes than the beginner has even tried. And that's the thing.
That's true.
You want children to go in, you want them to feel relaxed and loose and allow the information to come in. We have in classrooms 20 to 25, even 30 children in a classroom. And we're asking teachers to do nearly an impossible task. We're asking the teacher to teach to each one of the children this best learning method. Some kids are tactile. They learn by touching things. Other kids learn by listening. Some are visual learners. All these different methods of learning. The idea of the book is to help the child identify what their best learning method is. With that in mind, when they're listening in school, they're taking whatever the teacher is saying And in their mind, they're attempting to change it into the best way they can learn it. So even in the act of taking that information, reconsider it, and think about the best way it could be taught to them, the information goes in deeper, and it also has more meaning. It's not just a teacher saying something to them that they have to copy down on a piece of paper to regurgitate on a test. It's information that they can use to their fullest advantage in the best way possible. So the fact is, when children go to school at 5, 6 years old, kindergarten, or even first grade, they already should have a lot of the basics on how to learn, how to take information, and how to live their lives the best way possible. And you do that by taking the innate curiosity that we all have. We want to foster that curiosity. Now, if I ask you a question, you have a way of approaching it as an adult. You know that I'm pretty well educated. I know you're incredibly smart. So when we talk, we have like a common communication. Children are still establishing that communication. They're establishing the wellspring of knowledge to go to. So if a child asks you a question, if you give them the answer, you stop the educational quest. But if you say it's a really interesting question, let's examine that. And you go with them to find a book, you go to the library, you go outside, wherever you might find the information, and make it more of an active learning experience. The child just doesn't have that stop sign that that's the answer, that's all you needed. The child also gets the ways and approaches of really learning something actively. Mm-hmm. And this allows the information to go in a lot deeper. It also allows the children to own that information. It's not just something someone else has told them, but it's something they have earned. And that's an important lesson for everyone. We talk about, well, we don't, but a lot of people talk about how parents are hovering around their kids and doing all this. The fact is, parents can do an incredible service for their children by supporting them when they need the support, but also empowering them to know that they can take action, to make the education they have their own. Every one of us has had a different background. You know, I was born in upstate New York. I know where were you born, Inez?
I was born in Belgium.
In Belgium, okay. Well, we spoke about that before. And the fact is, your experiences now have brought you to Western Canada, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. My experiences now have brought me to Manassas, Virginia. Everything that's affected me, everything that's happened to me from the very beginning of being born in Johnson City, moving to Syracuse, moving to Alexandria, Virginia, going to school at Mary Washington, my graduate school at SUNY Binghamton, my doctoral program at Georgia, my research at Yale, all those things have helped affect who I am. All of them have. And the fact is, because my parents were really interested in me having an inquisitive nature, it became so second nature for me that everything that came to me made me ask more questions. Not just ask the questions, but have the thirst to go out and try to find out what the answers were. And if I gave them an answer that wasn't correct, instead of saying, no, you're wrong, they said, well, how did you come up with this? Let's see what your reasoning was. Let's see how you did that. That was really interesting. So I was honored for my inquisitive nature, even if I didn't come up with the exact right answers. So this book is essentially a guideline for parents to learn how to do that with their children, to allow them to fall and honor them for getting up every time, and to tell them that the fall is not the important thing, the resilience, the understanding that you have the power to get up and move forward with the lessons you learned from the fall. That is incredibly empowering for children. But frequently you'll see children who live their lives in fear, you know?
Yeah.
I was listening to Tom Nicoli this morning, and Tom was talking about fear and how we have to avoid that, and of course he's right. But there was a comedian in America named Bill Hicks, and he had a whole speech on life being a choice between fear and love. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a wonderful idea. And if we carry it through, if you can live your life in love and expect the things that come to you to teach you, to allow you to grow, to become a better, stronger person, more caring person, more complete, that means those failures are also part of that journey. And therefore, they're not to be held on to like a hot coal that can keep your hands warm in the winter but eventually burns you. You have to let go of those things. That's essentially it. We are born from the very beginning with an incredible self-corrective ability. Somehow that self-corrective ability gets shot off the rails, gets moved away. One of the things we're doing, I know we're not really supposed to be plugging this today, but I'm coming up in late September to the 4-day Simpson Protocol conference. And the thing is, while I was doing the Simpson Protocol, when I work with my clients, I realized the similarity in that and how we get to the very ground of where children start, even as adults. We do is we allow them to have that feeling, that solid foundation to build the rest of their lives on. Mm-hmm. The fact is, when we use hypnosis, what we're doing is we're shifting tectonic plates. We're moving all these events around in a different way. And eventually they have to settle down. But if we go back to the very beginning, we cut off the rough edges from those tectonic plates that can fit together a little bit better. The book was designed to allow that winnowing away of difficult times, to have that begin from when a child is very young. My wife and I were in Scotland, and there was a little girl crying, and she had fallen, and her parents were going over and giving her all this, oh, honey, it's terrible, you fell, all the rest of this. And she essentially was creating this extra little knot, that was negative, think about it. And what I did was I walked over to her and I said, I know you hurt, but you just hurt the ground too. You need to apologize to the ground. And her mind was thinking about, well, yeah, I did kind of hurt the ground, didn't I? And she started laughing and apologized to the ground. The parents looked at me like I was an idiot, but their child had stopped crying. That was my purpose. So anyway, that's a brief synopsis of what I do in the book.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting because I remember doing that with my kids when they were young. When they fell, inside you're going, or something. But on the outside, I was always like, oh, you'll be fine. And then just coming at it more from the direction that you came from. And it seemed to be, I didn't know any better at the time. But it worked very well because the kids just got up and kept going, and they thought, well, that wasn't so bad.
That's the thing. We want to honor that self-corrective thing.
Yeah.
You know how much you know a little bit about my situation with my sister and all. And my sister was she was probably the best teacher in the world. The book, Eyes Wide Open, is dedicated to my sister as a teacher. Anyway, the book, Eyes Wide Open. That's dedicated to my sister, the teacher. One of the things my sister did that I didn't necessarily agree with, my nephew, other than my wife, is probably the most important person in the world to me. As my nephew was growing up, though, my sister would protect him from going outside, playing in the dirt, and doing all those things. And as he got older, he began to have breathing problems because he had never had the opportunity to go out and experience the different pollens and allergens that would allow his system to adjust and get stronger, to be able to fight them out.
Yeah.
So by the time he was 11 or 12, he was beginning to have breathing problems because his body had never built up the immunity. This doesn't mean you take your child and you show them hot, scalding water and put them in, but you allow them to put their hand down where they can feel the heat, and they learn tactily, from touch, how important it is to not get burned by hot water, to avoid stoves, to do all those things. And because it's not words coming out, but it's something that affects all the senses, it's remembered, and it becomes more profound. Now, let's talk about what happened. You have wonderful daughters, and I keep seeing the picture of the grandbaby. Anyway, when your child fell, if you had gone and said, "Oh, honey, that's terrible," that small little event would have become that much larger. And because it became larger, it left a much larger impression. And what's the impression of? The impressions of pain, the impressions of losing balance, the impressions of falling.
Yeah.
And every time you compound that little divot you made gets deeper and deeper. You know what they say? The first thing you need to do to get out of a hole is stop digging.
Yeah.
So We want the parents to make sure they haven't already dug a hole for their children to start getting out of even before they start school. Yeah.
So when they do start school, I know I have quite a few people who I know their kids are entering grade 1, maybe grade 2. And sometimes now the way the system works, there's always a child that's always made to feel less than for some reason that they're not getting what the average or the norm would be. Right?
Let's think about the words we used.
Yeah.
The average or norm.
Yeah.
And as the normal for you is going to be different from the normal for me. The normal for you is going to be different from the normal with Martin. It's different with absolutely everyone you meet.
Yes.
The fact is, if you can be comfortable with your own normal and you create a new normal every time you get up in the morning, every time you take action, if you think, I'm creating a new, better normal for myself, you don't need to compare yourself against anyone else.
Okay.
One of the Buddhist philosophies is the beginning of anguish is comparison. You know?
Yeah, and
yep.
but that happens in school. Comparison is something that they do all the time. They give you marks, they give you all this stuff, and that's what I'm getting at. What they perceive as normal and average, not what you perceive. If we train our kids to be like you say, they won't have an issue with this. But the kids have an issue because you see them come home and they say, oh, I didn't do so good. And they said, I didn't do, they instead of they're going to have to, stay back and do more work or, something, let's say, because I don't know, or you failed, you didn't do well, all that stuff. I'm serious. This happens every day in a kid's life, right? Well, not the ones that are high achieving and work in the way that the teachers can teach them well.
Good. So the question is, what is a child's goal when they go to school?
Yes.
What my ideal is, the job of the child is to test how well they learn. The job of the child is to see how they can learn better. That's the job of the child. Now, I'm sorry, if I give you a letter, a B, a C, an A, a Z, it's a letter.
Yeah.
All it is marks on a paper. And I do not have to give that any kind of measure. I don't have to give that any kind of power over me. The child has to test themselves against themselves. And if a teacher says they failed, you realize they failed in some aspect. But what has the failure done? It's told you that you can learn better than this. How can you correct that? That's all it is. All it is a lesson. The one thing I tell everyone is there are two things in life. There are gifts and lessons. Someone gives you a compliment, and that is you're a wonderful teacher and a good friend. You have the opportunity to say, Tim, thank you. That means a lot to me. And it means a lot coming from you. That gift that I gave you, you've accepted it. And therefore, part of who you are is accepting the fact that you are a good teacher. You are a good friend. But beyond that, when you say that, you're telling me that my opinion has value to you.
Value, yes.
Okay? Now, if you said to me, Tim, and this is true, your shirt's a little wrinkly. Well, you know what? It is. That's true. Now, it really is. I like this shirt. It's comfortable, and today I decided to be comfortable. You have given me information that could be painful. But what I say is I acknowledge, you're right, and I could change this. But for now, to allow myself to be happy, which is my ultimate goal in life, I'm just going to keep this shirt on, but I appreciate the information, right?
Okay.
If a child gets an F, all it means is on that one day, for that 10 or 15-minute period, they didn't achieve a goal that they had set out, which means they can go and they can learn how they didn't reach the goal. They can find different ways of approaching it. That's the lesson. But unfortunately, if they say you failed, you're going to be punished by making you do more work, that's the way they view it. But if they view it as, this is showing you that there are ways you could learn better. Let's see how that is. I'm going to give you some more work. We'll approach it in a different way and see how that goes for you. Now, whose job is it? The teacher or the child to allow the child to feel better? The truth is it should be the teacher.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is, I was going to say create, but it's not the word. You want to prepare your children to be their own best teacher.
Yeah.
Because
I just was going
to promote discussion, Tim. The system of learning in a school. Let's say you're a very inquisitive child and you love history, whatever. But all you're going to do is be told, learn these dates and hit this test right. So if you get an F, it's not that you failed in your learning. It's you didn't give them what they wanted. So we have to kind of put that in.
Yeah, I will tell you that is this is
like you have to learn their game.
This is the real problem in the educational system.
Right.
If you go, let's talk about what you said. We talk about history, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You learn the history of whatever area. As I teach you this, your job is to show me how well you can learn. The information itself is not necessarily that important. What's important is you demonstrate a mastery of techniques to learn. You may not have an interest in this, but you know what we're going to do now is find out how well you can learn. So I'm going to give you this information, and I want you to take the skills you have, the tools you have, to show me how well you can learn them. And then it almost becomes a game for them, right?
Yes, I agree, but a teacher's not going to say that to a kid. The teacher's going to say, the test is coming up, and this is the questions, and you've got it. And if you said, well, that's interesting, learning the history of North America, how does that relate to China at that time? And they say, that's not the point. Learn the book.
Okay, the question. So what you're saying is, and actually this is, what you're saying is exactly correct, Martin. This is the greatest problem in education today. Mm-hmm. But the question is, who is determining the scope of education for your child? The teacher, the child himself. I want the children to go in, right, and I want them to ask really great questions. And if the teacher doesn't answer them, that's not the child's fault. They can still explore the answers. They can still make those connections.
So what I was going to say in the book, in the book was that, so that is a part of it, that you prepare the child. You know, you're not necessarily going to get what you want, but go find what you want, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's part of it.
And then part of it is part of, you know, what we're saying to the parents is you want to get your child ready to accomplish this, help them accomplish it at home, right? Isn't that what we're going for?
Yeah, that's it. But not just at home. What you want to do is, I want to give you an example that shows that it kind of indirectly applies to what Martin said, which is absolutely true. It also shows the failure of the educational system we have in a lot of areas. I said, look, I'd like to talk to the PTA about Skies Wide Open, okay? Which is a wonderful book. Anyway, I want to show this to the parents. And one of my friends went to a parents group, and the parents group said, no, we're not going to do that because it doesn't meet the standards of learning.
Right.
In other words, I'm sorry, that doesn't fit what the children are supposed to know for today, which of course is absolutely anathema to true education. So if your child goes in, let's start at ground zero, not even going to history. When a child goes in, you know, your job is to make the teacher look as positive as possible. And this is when they teach, you want to learn the best way you can, okay? And you're going to be evaluated on how well you can learn. So really go out, learn the best way for you to learn and improve on that all the time. And give the teacher exactly the best you can. And if you didn't get it right, that's fine, because it tells you there are things you can improve on, which is great. What a wonderful lesson to learn. No negativity. No sabotaging a child.
I would agree with that. Just a second. What was the book called again? What was the book?
Oh, the book. You mean Skies Wide Open?
That one, yes.
How do you teach your child to dream big and love learning?
Oh, yeah, that one, yes. Is it good?
Do you mean what book? You mean Skies Wide Open? How to teach your child to dream big and love learning? Well,
the thing on you're saying about the child's job is to learn, and I agree, for that book. The child's job is to learn, but the education system doesn't really promote learning a lot of the time. It promotes rote stuff and memory stuff and fit in so you can get into the corporate culture. Sit still, do what I tell you, hit the tests, and that's it. That doesn't really help learning.
Yeah. So, but you're
So
saying,
I'm just saying, do you prepare
yeah,
the child for that too?
what he's saying is that the parent has to help the kid learn how they're going to learn, and then the kid has to take responsibility to do the learning.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Sort of.
True, but let me say this. Children will know the way that they learn best.
Right.
Children will know the way they learn best. And if their job going to school, it's a game. It's like a 9-inning game to determine who's going to be ahead at the end. And the way they're scored is, how well did you learn the information? If you do well on a test, it means that you learned well. It doesn't mean that information is particularly important. But what it is a game for you. And the more fun you have, the better you do, the better you can feel about yourself. So get into the game. What you talked about is you're not conforming. You will not fit into the corporate structure and all that. Well,
I agree. I told my daughter the same thing. When she was going, I don't get this. Why are they teaching us this? I said, it's a game. Play the game and win it for yourself.
So if you we'll talk about that. If you told your daughter, what they're doing is they're seeing how well you can learn.
Well,
whatever they throw at you, they're evaluating how well you can learn. So see how you can do that. How could you approach it in a different way? You know? This is the problem with grades and letters and things like that. And what Inez was talking about earlier about how some kids are made to feel different or not normal or less than others, you know? Different is not wrong. It's not bad. Different is different. And we talked about the fact that normal for me is entirely different from normal for everyone else. But there has to be some satisfaction in that. My goal, and I think it's Inez's goal, we have clients, Inez and I are both hypnotists. Our goal is this, I think generally, to allow our clients to have the happiest, healthiest life possible. That's our goal. Now, everything we do, if I had a client come in yesterday, and I will tell you, I use the Simpson protocol, which is very effective. And I did 3 sessions with her. And what she did was, after the first session, these tectonic shifts had gone on and the plates had moved. She went home and she journaled. A brilliant lady. And after the second session, we did some tweaking. Third session, we were just doing like, well, it's almost done. What's going on? I'm going to fix this. Her husband said to her after reading one of her journals, you know, we've probably saved about $6,000 or $7,000 for a year's worth of psychoanalysis and counseling. The thing is, that's my job, to get a person moving toward their greatest happiness. Now, if a child goes to school and they're going to play a game and enjoy it fully, and to get happiness from learning how well they can learn, and finding out, well, I didn't learn this well, how can I approach it differently? That's part of the game too. They are there to get the greatest joy, the greatest happiness they can have. And as our friend Jerry Kine said, the subconscious mind protects you against danger, real and imagined. If you think when you go to school, you're going to be beaten down, the teachers are going to tell you how, I'm going to use the word just for demonstration purposes, how stupid you are or how you can't learn, why would a child do that? They're going to create the avoidance behavior. And the avoidance behavior can be manifest in a couple of different ways. The kids sleep in and tell their parents they can't go to school. Or when they get to school, they shut down. They don't open their mouths. They don't answer questions when the teachers put their hands up because they're afraid of being wrong. Yeah. And eventually that afraid of being wrong becomes a fear of being right because they're not quite sure how far they can go. Take a child who has a great deal of ability. They just, for whatever reason, have a good native intellect. They go to school, and when they're young, the teachers corrected them in a way that was harsh that began to shut them down. Then what they do is they begin the avoidance behavior of this. They don't study as much. They don't engage in the education as much because they feel I probably could be an A or B student, but I'm not going to put in the effort because I don't feel like being marked down and getting a B or a C. I know since I'm putting in half effort, I'll get a C, and that's okay with me. When they could have gotten the A if they made the commitment to doing it, if they found the joy of doing it, if they found the joy of when I'm wrong, I can correct it and get stronger and get better at learning. That joy. We have avoidance behaviors in all sorts of different ways. You'll have kids who get B's and C's in high school, and then they take a standardized test, which I generally don't agree with, to evaluate where they are in terms of math and English and writing. And sometimes they score off the chart. Why wasn't that demonstrated in school? Did the child fail or did the school? The fact is, when you're teaching your children, what you are doing is arming them for whatever teacher, whatever situation they run into, to do the best they can, to enjoy education. When you go to school, your job is to have as much fun as possible. And to do that, when a teacher makes a mistake, you feel bad that they weren't able to teach it better. And you're going to help them by adjusting the way they taught to a way you can take the information and best. You're taking control of your education. You're not a passive learner. You're an active learner.
So the whole part is, though, that the parents have to get them to that place of recognition that they can do that, because it's not going to happen usually. Some teachers.
You're right.
But it's not going to happen. So it's just like I say, you have to take responsibility for your own life. We always say that, even no matter what's happened in it. So we want to get a child early on. So we ask the parents to take responsibility, read the book, you know, that book that you wrote, Eyes Wide Open, put it that, yeah. And taking responsibility to help their kids learn that it's a game, and to have the love of learning, and to open up their dreams, all that stuff that you write about.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But I also want you to think it's important to establish boundaries for children, to prevent them from hurting themselves.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, you also want the children to have the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. You don't want to overly protect them. So the parents have got to be protective of them without sheltering them from growing, right?
Yeah.
You know, they have if you have a child and you put them, well, I'll go for a slightly different analogy. If you put a corset on someone and they have to keep the corset on, this is what they did with women in the 19th century. They put a corset on them that remained with them for long periods of time. Their body began to adapt to it. And their waist would be exceptionally thin, which they thought was attractive. It wasn't, but it also was unhealthy for them. But because of the pressure around their waist, the body begins to conform to that. If you're on top of your child to make sure they get absolutely everything perfect, you're causing them to conform to something else.
Yeah.
You're not allowing them to expand their knowledge and do all the rest of that. So, you see what I'm saying?
Let's keep talking instead of it.
Okay. Anyway, that's my concern. There's this concept called helicopter parents, where the parents are always around protecting their child from dangers real and imagined.
Yeah.
When that happens, the children lose the opportunity to fail and learn, right? There's one of the sayings, I know you've heard me say this to almost all the people I know. It's a quote from Aeschylus. And he said, "He who learns must suffer. And even in our sleep, pain that cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our deepest despair against our will comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." You don't want to fear that pain. You want to accept it and see what it teaches you and move forward. When children are afraid of the pain, they're going to avoid it. But if they avoid the pain, they also could avoid the lesson. And that's something that that should not happen.
Mm. Yeah, I think in my mind, though, I agree with all that. But what I'm looking for as a grandmother or a mother, right, is to make my child prepared to enjoy but also, like you say, allowed to fail, do all those things. And I agree. So I still initially, because the kids but I think luckily today, from what I see and people bringing up kids, there is a much better I think they're much better in general than what it used to be a generation ago. There's also the other ones, the extreme that, maybe protect their kids too much, like your sister not letting the kid play in the dirt. I mean, that's, the same sort of thing. That does still happen. But I think if you allow your kids to fall down, like you say, and get up and learn that can be really great too, right? It's not just about the not falling. It's not about not falling, right?
Right. It is that. I think something I want to point out, because you're absolutely correct that they're going to run into teachers that don't approach things quite the right way. When they go to school, they want to have an understanding that, the way we learn is incredible, but you're going to find other people who don't do that. Maybe your teacher doesn't. That's fine. That's the way she feels good, and it's important for her to feel good. Mm-hmm. But to make yourself feel good, you have to be able to accept people who are a little different and work with them. And that shows great resilience. That shows what a good person you are. Mm-hmm. So if they don't teach quite the right way, you can change it and modify it. That's what I'm teaching you to do. But you want to always feel good about your teacher doing the best they can, just like you are. And you don't have to feel negative about your teacher at all. You just realize she's just like us. She's going through the same things we are. And the friends and people you meet as you go along, you're going to find kids who are a little different from you that you like. You're going to find kids who are a lot like you, but you just don't like them. That's fine. But being able to look back and examine why those things happen, that's important too. Right?
Yeah, very good. Yep. Yeah. So thinking about that, it's I think it's a big enterprise. I sort of look back on my own school years and the times that I failed or did well. I think I was considered quite smart. And I sort of took that to the edge because I didn't do anything for 1 year. 1 year, I was in total, was that, what did you say it?
Avoidance.
Avoidance. I did nothing. And surprise, surprise, I didn't make it to the next year. So grade 10, it was a very enlightening moment for me.
Well, let's talk about this. And actually, when we do the protocol, we talk about this.
Yeah.
When we talk about the experiences we have.
Yeah.
An experience is an experience. That is all it is. Mm. And if everything that happens to you is a gift or a lesson, you take the lesson from the experience, even if it's negative. Mm-hmm. And after that, the stress, the anxiety, the discomfort that was created by that experience, it does not serve a purpose. If we're self-correcting, we fall. We'll just take the fall because we're using that a lot. If you fall, you hurt yourself. Oh, that means I have to be more careful when I walk. Great, thank you. The pain that you had from the fall really doesn't serve a purpose except to tell you you really might have hurt yourself, check that out, or you have to be more careful. Mm-hmm. Take the lesson. The rest doesn't serve a purpose. Mm. And ultimately, our purpose in life, and I go back to this a lot, is to be as happy and healthy as we can be. Anything that doesn't serve that purpose has to be eliminated or changed or modified, whatever else. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. We want children to begin with that kind of resilience.
Yeah.
And to get it from the very beginning. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at is getting it from the very beginning. Because what you and I do is help people who didn't get it at the beginning a lot of the time. So, and in general, all human beings, no matter as we look at other people, we always think everyone else has got this perfect thing going on, because we all wear our masks, right? We all have little masks that we wear out in public. So people that come and see us, they always think that everybody else around them, not everybody, but they tend to think that everyone else around them is having the perfect time, and it's only them that is having this horrible experiences, And every one of us has horrible experiences and good experiences. The trouble is we're taught to focus a lot of the time, and in the teaching thing too, on the negative experience instead of, like you say, shifting it in the perception of that and saying, well, gee, how can I grow from that?
Yeah. And that's because Robert Frost wrote about the path less traveled by, and that can make all the difference. Unfortunately, frequently the path most traveled by is the one down that movement to anguish and despair.
Yeah.
So what we have to do, and what we're doing essentially with our clients and with the hypnosis we use, is we're creating that new road for them.
Yeah.
We're creating a new normal for them.
Yeah.
Normal is a thing that they can slide into easily.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's comfortable for them. The funniest thing is, for a lot of people, feeling good, feeling loved, feeling complete is not comfortable.
No.
And they rebel against it.
Mm-hmm.
The question I ask my clients, I talk to them and get them into a nice, relaxed state. And I said, I'm going to ask you one question. I want you to think about it, just say yes or no without thinking. And I'll say something like, do we need a new president? And then they'll laugh. Okay, laugh, bypass a critical fact. Then I say, here's the real question. Do you deserve to be happy? And you'd be amazed how many people pause to say yes. Or they shake their head, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
They try to find that. The fact is, happy for Nez Simpson is different than happy for Tim Horn.
Mm-hmm.
Our happiness has to be our own. It's got to be unique. It's got to be genuine, according to everything that makes us up, right? So that's actually, okay, we'll talk about the Simpson protocol. One of the really good things about this is I do not have to tell my client what happiness is for them, because somehow at their deepest level, they know what it is. They know what that is. And our job is not to get them there. It's to release the barriers from them so they can just get there and create that road,
Mm-hmm.
a new road that they can travel on and feel empowered to do it and realize they're the ones who created the barriers to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the events that have occurred to them for whatever reason can still lead them in that road if they just view it the right way.
Yeah.
Randy Pausch, who was the professor at Carnegie Mellon, who was dying of liver cancer, gave a really great lecture called The Last Lecture. He was chosen as professor at Carnegie Mellon to do the last lecture when he had this liver cancer. And he said that barriers are not there to stop you from getting to something. They're there to show you how badly you want it.
That's true.
Right? That's a wonderful idea. Incredibly brilliant, man. And, I think about that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you really have a goal for that greatest happiness, the greatest sense of success,
Mm-hmm.
that is so overwhelming, so all-encompassing, that anything that appears to you just seems to be a little hurdle that you can either knock down or jump over.
Mm-hmm.
If you're so empowered to get it, everything else disappears. It's like that scene in Bagger Vance where Juna, I don't know if you know this movie, but he gets up on the tee,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else disappears. All he sees is the flag. The people are gone. All there is the grass, the trees, and that open field. When that flag out there is something so important to you, you realize your life is almost meaningless without it. All the other barriers disappear. So we have to find that thing. It's like in the movie City Slickers. Curly talks about you have to find that one thing in life. And they say, well, what is it? That's what you have to find out. And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
I think what we're doing as hypnotists is getting our clients to the point where they can know what that one thing is. That one thing that's going to energize them so much they feel empowered and driven to achieve it. When that happens, I think we've done a good job.
Mm-hmm.
We can send them out of our office a lot happier. The things we create.
Keep going.
Yes,
Yeah, you were thinking something there that you wanted to say.
Yeah, well, Truman Capote said that genius is a gift from God for self-flagellation. You beat yourself up. I think a lot of things very quickly. Anyway, we end up creating all these barriers for ourselves along the way. And the real problem is we forget that if we built them, we can take them down, you know? And that's actually a pretty empowering thing.
Yeah. We always talk about people feeling like they want to stay in control, so they hang on like crazy, which is really the opposite of what's needed to become in control. It's because once you're in control, you can design that, and you're designing your life the way you want it.